funky, that's funky. Like 9 cans of shaving powder, that's funky. Come on with it again, fella, come on with it.
That's right. We're going to come on with it. We're going to come on with it. We want to thank you. We had to introduce you to a little bit of this topic today. The early bird gets the worm, and the second mouse gets the cheese, with a little bit of the Ohio players talking about that funky worm. That's right. Thank you for joining the man, Rory T. Edwards, on the Throwback Thursday. You know I'm coming a little different every day. I'm going to do a little something different for you to make sure we stay entertained but stay informed. And so, like I said, our topic today is the early bird gets the worm, and then we're going to fall into the second mouse gets the cheese. And so I said I want to change the direction on that. But let me first and foremost say, hopefully you're staying safe. I know some places have allowed actual people to and organizations to now begin opening. And so I just suggest to you that you be safe and definitely be selective in how you congregate, because they don't really have any answers. And so we need to be very careful in the way that we interject, because I really want you all to be around and continue to listen to these Throwback Thursdays, and also for me to interact with you. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about, first and foremost, the early bird gets the worm. I always used to hear that, growing up, you had an opportunity to go get a job, and people were opening up companies, and they said interviews start at 7 a.m. We're not taking any appointments. It's like first come, first served basis. And so people would tell you, your parents would say, make sure you laid your clothes out, make sure you have everything in order, make sure you take your shower tonight, because you need to be first in line, because the early bird gets the worm. And so we used to wonder, what does the early bird mean with getting the worm? And so sometimes what you would do, you would see that some of the birds would be out early in the morning, and they would be in the grass, and they get the worms, and they would be gone, and they would be off to feed their young. But for adults and for people to hear that, and children to hear that, you were always like, well, what does that mean? It meant that if you were first, that you would get the best of the pickings. It also meant that if you were first in line, that you would have the greatest opportunity to receive that job. And so what has evolved is that a lot of people now are not getting that opportunity to just come for jobs, to be first in line. One of the things we have to realize is that as the industrial phase has moved away and the technological phase has now become the norm in the world, that we have to understand that it's not really that you need to be early, but you need to be prepared when you get there. So many people are wondering, why am I not receiving any jobs? And you're not looking at the job description, you're not filling out your applications properly, you're not putting in the right credentials, so that you don't have to be first in line, but that you must be an early candidate that has the best credentials and be the most prepared at the beginning of the process. And usually there's two phases of the process. One is the beginning, and some people remember the people who they meet in the beginning, and it's also people who they've met at the end of the process, based on the time period. So there's a lot of little stuff that when you're first, that you get the attention that you're seeking. But it also means a lot of things in situations. A lot of times we get into situations where we see something and we're saying that we're going to wait. I'm going to wait on it tomorrow. It's going to be there tomorrow. It's going to be there the next week. I don't really have the resources right now to get it, or I'm going to do this a little bit later. Sometimes time waits for no one. And so that when you are looking at the process of trying to get something on your time, time waits for no one. So when people talk about the early bird gets the worm, it's being the most prepared, it's being there on time, it's being there first, it's being the most qualified, and it's being the person who is going to reap the benefits of the pickings at the early phase and stages of any type of environment or any type of opportunity that you think that you want to be involved in. And so that's what the early bird gets the worm concept for me is, and has a little bit of bearing. So let's talk about the second one. The second one, I didn't hear that much, but I was looking at it and it was attached, and it says the second mouse gets the cheese. So let me tell you what I think about what that means. The second mouse gets the cheese. I think there's a few things that we must look at when we talk about the second mouse gets the cheese. Let's talk about the first one. Why doesn't the first mouse get the cheese? The first mouse doesn't get the cheese because the first mouse sacrifices his or her life so that they'll go in and they'll be the sacrificial lamb. And so the mechanism will go off and it will sort of disenfranchise. Let's use that word. Let's use that as a soft word. Disenfranchise the first mouse. And so then that means every mouse behind him can now come in because the mechanism has already expounded and exposed itself. And so that gives the actual second mouse, third mouse, fourth mouse an opportunity to just walk in and take the cheese and go back. But let's look at it from a historical perspective. So many of us look at the opportunities that we have today, and we look at the how far we, some people say how far we have come, and not a lot of people always recognize the shoulders that we're standing on that may have been the first mouse. The only reason we're getting the cheese is because we stand on the shoulders of the first mouse. We're the second mouse. We're the third mouse. We're the fourth mouse who is standing on the shoulders of those who have sacrificed their life, their liberty, their character, their blood, their sweat, and their tears, so that we may be able to get the cheese. Now, are we taking the cheese and are we passing the cheese forward? Are we paying it forward? Are we providing those generations who come behind us the opportunity also to profit and to benefit from the cheese that the first generation that was caught in the mechanism? Think about that. There's another thing, knowing your history. So many people say, you know, I don't want to know my history. You know, I don't know. We don't have a country for which we come from. You do have a country for which you come from. It's just that you choose not to believe that the facts of that country is the country that produces all of the great things that we now believe are products of other countries. We just haven't done our research. And sometimes when we get people to give us a historical perspective, what they do is they come so hard at us and they try to inundate us with all this information at one particular time that we believe the information is toxic. And so what we do, we move away from the information. And so we really don't know our true history. We believe that history had nothing to do with me. You got to understand that generational history also affects present time and future time. And it's evident in what's going on right now in the world. And so we must look at it from that perspective. The third thing I want to talk to you about, the second mouse always gets the cheese, is learning the mechanism. There have been so many things that, and I don't even want to talk about our existence being sort of brought into this world from the perspective of slavery, because before we were enslaved, we didn't volunteer, or we didn't agree to be in slavery. We were enslaved. So don't ever say being part of slavery, because we were enslaved. We were never agreeable to the institution of slavery. So let's just get that straight before we move any forward or any past any part of this conversation. I want you to change your narrative to the fact that you were enslaved. Your ancestors were enslaved. And so when you understand the mechanism, once slavery was abolished, there were mechanisms put in place that would make you the first mouse. And so what happened during that first phase of the mouses, there were mechanisms that were put in place that would prevent you from getting the cheese. And so there were Jim Crow laws, there were black codes, there were so many other of those laws that were put in place, civil rights, constitutional amendments, the 13th Constitution, which talks about the freedom of individuals who had the freedom unless you were incarcerated. And so people were being incarcerated for things that were trivial. People were being incarcerated for walking too many steps on one side of the street. And so what it did is it gave you an opportunity. It took away your opportunity to actually be a citizen. So that's when you understand and learn the mechanism that is what caught the first mouse. And so that's why the second mouse gets the cheese, because the people who endured that particular information and fought through that mechanism gave us the opportunity to actually get the cheese. And so what do we do with the cheese? We get the cheese, and sometimes we take the cheese in the corner and we eat all the cheese without sharing the cheese. And then we understand why all the other mouse are hungry, because we didn't share the sacrifices of the first mouse, right? So we have to make sure that we understand what sacrifice really means. Sacrifice doesn't mean that you don't have a voice. Sacrifice means that your voice should be spoken with the ability to understand what the outcomes are going to be. Just don't spew off information and expect somebody to respect your information if you don't have a valid outcome. We are in a generational opportunity right now where we have the opportunity to spread information at a rapid rate. We also have the opportunity to be in a situation where we already have sacrificed our first mouse. We should now be utilizing the cheese of their sacrifices, of their blood, of their sweat, of their commitment to making sure that those who come behind them do abide and reap the benefits of the cheese. And so as we talk about this, I want you to really and truly understand that there are certain things that are in place. We are a very reactive group of individuals instead of a proactive individuals, because sometimes we don't understand the mechanism that caught the first mouse. We believe that the first mouse was caught because he wasn't smart enough to navigate through the process and get the cheese. No, the mechanisms change every day. The mechanisms change, but you have to learn how to collaboratively, collectively undermine or to restructure the mechanism so that no mouse gets caught in the cheese. That is what we need to do going forward. There's so many things that I see in the news. So many times we are speaking about the young man in Georgia who was gunned down. And we know that the mechanism will not be justifiably in our favor. And so we have to find a new way to change the mechanism. And I'm going to give you one quick opportunity for that. Mechanisms are changed at the highest level of law. And so what do we have to do? We have to stop protesting on social media. I'm not protesting, please. So don't say you protesting on social media. I'm not protesting on social media. I'm giving you solutions on social media. We have to become a part of the system which changes the mechanisms. We can't be on the outside looking in, telling people to change the policy if we're not at the table. So for all those individuals who are able to galvanize thousands and thousands of people, put your name on the ballot. Make sure that you become politically informed and influential, so that you can change the mechanisms which will prevent the first mouse from getting caught, and that the second mouse, the third mouse, the fourth mouse, the fifth mouse, and all of the mouses who come behind them will all get the cheese. All right, this is your man Rory T. I was just coming at you a little different on this Throwback Thursday. Brought you two today because I was on the road last week, traveling 38 hours in an automobile, making sure that my daughter got from Nevada to North Carolina. I want to thank you all for consistently being a part of these Throwback Thursdays. If you have some topics that you would like to hear me discuss, please give me an email. Send me an email, not give me one, but send me an email at rorytedwards1@gmail.com. We will try our best to get to some of the things that you may believe are concerns, and talk about the old sayings that you heard that you had no idea what they mean, but we're going to transform them for you now into modern times. But I hope everybody's being safe. I hope everybody's family is being safe. And I hope that you're taking this time to prepare yourself to be that early bird that gets the worm. This is your man, Rory T. Edwards. Y'all be blessed, stay positive, stay productive, but stay woke. All right? We out.